I found Peter Schiff on the floor, big gold bug, big anti-Bitcoin man.
You can't replace gold with Bitcoin, right? I can't make jewelry out of Bitcoin. I can't conduct electricity with Bitcoin. I mean, they make Bitcoin look like gold. When they draw it, they make it gold and they put a V on there and it's a coin, but it's just a string of numbers. It's not a coin. It doesn't have any color.
How much research and homework have you done on that? And how do you really see it compared to gold?
And I'm a true Bitcoiner there.
I'm
holding it down to zero. I'm going down with the ship like everybody else.
We're here at Bitcoin 2025. I found Peter Schiff on the floor, big gold bug, big anti-Bitcoin man. First of all, I think it's fantastic you're here talking about Bitcoin, talking to Bitcoiners. You've got a lot of critics in the industry. I want to take it back a long time. Tell us how and when you first heard of Bitcoin and what you originally thought.
Well, I first heard about it in 2010 when I was running for U.S. Senate. There were some people that were wanting to make donations to my campaign in Bitcoin. And some of my guys working on my campaign knew about Bitcoin, were kind of into it at the time. So they told me about it because they didn't have much money to buy it with, but I had money.
Yeah.
And so I could have taken a significant position. Obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, I should have. And sure, do I regret? Because I thought seriously about buying it.
Yep.
And I just didn't do it. And that was probably the main reason that I didn't buy it later. Because when it was around $1, I forget if it was below $1 or above $1. And I thought about maybe throwing in 5-10 grand, maybe 50 or 100 grand. I mean, I thought about it, right? But then I didn't do it. And then I saw it take off. You know, it went up to like $1,000. Like, I should have bought it. God, I could have made a lot of money. And then when it pulled back, and it went for several years, it was 300, 400, no fear. And some people I knew started buying it. I found out some people that, had hedge funds were buying it. I'm like, why are people buying this? And I thought, maybe it's going to have another run. It's probably going to go higher. And if these guys are buying it, more people could buy it. And I said, maybe I should buy it. And the mental block I couldn't get over was paying like $400 to buy something that I didn't want to buy at $4.
Yeah.
And not thinking that it could actually, go this high. I was like, well, where can it go?
Yeah.
2,000. I don't know. I did, because what if it goes to 200? What if it goes to 100, right? So I didn't buy it. And then, of course, it went way up. But now, I don't even consider it now. I mean, back then I thought about it, didn't do it. But at these kind of prices, I have absolutely no interest in it because there's so much more downside risk, in my opinion, than the upside potential. And there's a lot of other things that I would rather put my money in.
Mm-hmm.
And, the interesting thing is that if you look at the peak from 2021, which is almost 4 years ago, Bitcoin is 10% lower priced in gold than it was then, despite all the ETFs and all the Bitcoin's treasury companies and the strategic reserve and the Bitcoin czar and all the money and the Super Bowl ads and all the hype. The market really hasn't gone up. You look at MicroStrategy, the poster boy, his average cost of Bitcoin is $70,000.
Yeah.
I mean, 105,000 wherever we are. That's not much higher considering how much he bought to get it up here.
Yeah.
And if as Saylor tried to get out, it wouldn't be 70,000, it'd be lower.
Yeah.
Whereas he could have bought gold instead of Bitcoin, his unrealized gains would be relatively the same, but he could get out without moving the market. He's stuck. In fact, he has to buy every week to keep the market propped up.
Yeah. When it comes to Bitcoin and its value proposition and the protocol itself, how much research and homework have you done on that? And how do you really see it compared to gold? Obviously, you're a big gold bug. You believe in the value proposition of gold. Why don't you see Bitcoin as the same thing when there are very good resources out there that make a compelling argument for that?
Well, I don't see that it's anything like gold. First of all, in the physical world,
yeah,
you can't replace gold with Bitcoin, right? I can't make jewelry out of Bitcoin. I can't conduct electricity with Bitcoin. So you can't use it in aerospace, in consumer electronics, in medicine, the way you can gold. So in the physical world, it's nothing like gold.
Mm-hmm.
In the financial world, it's kind of the opposite of gold. Yeah. There's a negative correlation. Bitcoin correlates with risk assets, like tech stocks.
Yeah.
So if the NASDAQ is up big, chances are Bitcoin is up.
Yeah.
And gold is down. You can almost tell what Bitcoin is doing by looking at gold and vice versa.
Yeah.
When people are worried about stuff, when there's bad economic news, the markets are sinking, something's happening where people want to take risk off, they buy gold. Yeah. They sell their Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is the anti-gold in the investment world, and it's nothing like gold in the physical world, then, what has it got to do with gold? Digital gold is a fraud. I mean, they make Bitcoin look like gold when they draw it, right? They make it gold and they put a B on there and it's a coin, but it's just a string of numbers. It's not a coin. It doesn't have any color. So I think it's, fool's gold. I think they're trying to convince people to buy it instead of gold, but people should buy Bitcoin instead of, some, startup tech company that's got no earnings and, hype. Or, we're in Las Vegas. You can play blackjack. You can play craps. You can buy Bitcoin, right? Those are the things that Bitcoin has something in common with.
Yep.
It doesn't have anything in common with gold.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I would counter that just to say that obviously proof of work, the consensus mechanism, requires you to expend energy and computational power to allow us to transact in a decentralized way without a centralized authority. That's the value, right?
Well, but the thing is, proof of work doesn't really mean anything if the work doesn't result in value. If I pay somebody to dig a hole and then I pay them to fill it back up again, there's been a lot of work, but I don't have anything to show for it. I haven't created anything.
Fair enough.
They've wasted the labor. So when you expend energy to produce a Bitcoin, to solve a mathematical equation that results in a Bitcoin, you don't have anything other than that Bitcoin, which is really nothing.
But you have a medium of exchange. I mean, that's the value, right? It's a decentralized way for us to pay each other, and it needs to do the proof of work in order for that to.
Nobody uses Bitcoin really as a medium of exchange because it's no good.
It's slow, and it started in America and Europe, but in some small.
But even in Europe, it's too expensive to use. Yeah, it's too slow. But when you expend energy to mine gold, you have gold. You have a real tangible commodity that you could do stuff with. Yeah. But what you can also do with gold is use it as a medium of exchange. And what people can do in these poor countries, if I tokenize gold and put it on the blockchain, people in poor countries can buy it and use it in ways that they can't use Bitcoin. Knowing that their gold is safely stored in Switzerland or Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong, they can have a digital representation of that ownership and they can use it as a medium of exchange much better than Bitcoin. They can actually make micro purchases that are prohibitively expensive to make with Bitcoin.
Yeah, fair enough. You recently followed suit when the United States announced that they were going to adopt a Bitcoin reserve. You said, hey guys, I'm going to do the same experiment. I'm setting up a proof of reserve. So technically you're holding some Bitcoin. Talk through this process, what you think about the thought experiment.
Well,
Bitcoin,
they were making a big deal about the strategic reserve.
Yeah.
But, Trump came out and said, yeah, we have the reserve, but we're not going to spend any money to fill it up.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we could find a budget neutral way at no cost to the taxpayers. And so I decided to have my own reserve under the same concept. Okay. So I created my Bitcoin reserve and I said, I will fill up this reserve as long as I don't have to spend any money. I'm not going to buy any Bitcoin. But if I could find a way to get free Bitcoin, I'll do what the governors do.
And you did, right? Some people
I got a little bit. Yeah, I got like 5% of a Bitcoin, something like that.
Okay. But I mean, it's still, I love that you did that because as someone who's hypercritical of Bitcoin, you went and did the thought experiment.
Well, and the first one I had was on Coinbase.
Yeah.
And people sent money, Bitcoin to it. But then it got moved by Coinbase, and so people thought I was selling it. I said, no, I'm not selling it. It's still there.
Yeah.
So then I transferred all that Bitcoin, or they self-custody. I bought this Tether thing, or whatever it was.
Yeah, Trezor wallet, yeah.
Yeah. And so I put the Bitcoin there, and then I put that address and say, here's the strategic reserve.
Yeah.
So everybody can see it and make sure that I'm not selling any, because it's all staying there. Because that's what the Bitcoin reserve is. You hold it.
Yep.
Forever. And I'm a true Bitcoiner there.
I'm
holding it down to zero. I'm going down with the ship like everybody else.
You realize you orange pilled yourself. I mean, when you announced it online, I was like, Peter, you orange pilled yourself. You did what everyone is wanting to see for a really long time. But
now I'm here. I got to do the Heimlich maneuver and get that orange pill out of everybody.
And how did that go?
Unpill them. maybe put a gold pill in there instead, you know.
Let's talk about gold versus Bitcoin right now. Like, these are very uncertain times we live in, right? Like Trump's tariffs really shook the markets. People were very uncertain. There was talk of Bitcoin decoupling for a while. It performed differently from tech stocks. That's what the kind of talk of the town was. How important are gold? And I mean, I know you don't think Bitcoin is the same thing, but a lot of people see it as a risk.
Well, I don't think it's decoupled from risk assets yet. I think it's still highly correlated. I mean, Bitcoin did kind of bottom before the NASDAQ and then kind of rallied with it.
Yep.
But it really still is very negatively correlated to gold.
Okay.
And, you know, I think when gold makes a new high back above 3,500, I expect Bitcoin to be lower than it is today, not higher.
My last question to you, Tether hold a significant amount of gold. I think Paolo Ardoino said that they hold about 50 tons of gold and they're tokenized that. What do you think of the convergence of blockchain and opening up gold markets?
Well, I think, look, that is a legitimate use of blockchain. I think gold is probably one of the best assets to tokenize, you know, because the custody costs are relatively low and it's very stable. You know, I mean, whether I trust Tether as my custodian, I've always been very suspicious about Tether.
You should meet Paolo and he might change your mind. But
yeah, I mean, but if I was going to buy an asset-backed token, I'd much prefer one backed by dollars than U.S. Treasuries, especially since, you know, when you buy Tether, you don't get any of the interest on those Treasuries. Tether keeps all that money, right? So you just take all the inflation risk without any of the offsetting interest income. Tether just keeps all that income on somebody else. So Tether and all stable coins, that's why the Trumps won in on the action. It is a windfall for the issuer of the token, but it's not a good deal for the buyer.
Peter, thank you so much for your time.
All right.
I find it very interesting that you came into the den of the Bitcoiners, and you've done a great job at actually orange pilling a lot of people. So thank you so much.